at a lunch at the Senate gym. What more do we know about his condition, who he was exposed to?
Yeah, Frederica, I think you kind of summarized the condition as best as we know it up to this point. His office putting out a statement saying that he is asymptomatic. He did get tested out of abundance of caution. He is not aware of any interactions he had with somebody who was infected or had tested positive. However, he has tested positive, and that has led to significant concerns inside the Senate Republican conference for a couple of different reasons. You mentioned Senate lunches. Over the course of the last several days, not today, but over the course of the last several days, Senator Paul has been present at the regular Senate lunches that have been ongoing as senators from both parties have attempted to try and negotiate and hammer out agreement on a massive economic emergency package that they're working on right now. So that's one of the issues that Senate Republicans are concerned about right now, is their proximity to Senator Paul during that time period, during some of those lunches where they often sit close to one another. Now, I will note, over the course of the last several days, the tables have been moved further apart from one another. Senators have told us that they have been sitting further apart from one another. Still, there's some concern there. The bigger concern, I think, was something that was brought up at today's Senate Republican lunch, I'm told, behind closed doors. Senator Paul was not at today's lunch because he had found out he tested positive this morning. However, Senator Jerry Moran, a Kansas Republican, told his colleagues during that lunch that he had seen Senator Paul at the Senate gym that morning. Senator Paul had been seen swimming in the gym swimming pool that morning. Senator Moran told his colleagues, and I can tell you, Frederica, I had several of Senator Moran's colleagues, several Senate Republicans, come to me after that lunch, which was behind closed doors, and expressed serious concern about just their proximity, what it means for their conference. The fact that over the course of the last several days, many of those senators had been leading negotiators and pretty tightly cloistered rooms where they have been trying to hammer out the details of this significant stimulus package that they're working on right now. And several members have said and made clear they are going to the physicians on Capitol Hill to see what they need to do based on the proximity or interactions they've had with Senator Paul over the last several days. Haven't got any firm answers yet on where that stands. Senator Moran's communications director said that he had kept a safe distance from Senator Paul when he saw him at the gym, and so he is not going to quarantine at this point. But a lot of other senators are waiting to hear whether or not they actually need to self-quarantine. And I'll tell you, Frederica, another thing I've heard from a couple of Republican senators is some pretty serious questioning as to when Senator Paul took his test and why he was still interacting with other senators if he'd known he had taken a test and hadn't gotten his results back yet. We don't have any answers to that other than we know he got his results this morning, and once he got the results, he left Capitol Hill. But this is kind of rippling through the Senate Republican conference right now at a time where, to be frank, they all need to be on Capitol Hill. There is no remote voting on Capitol Hill. And given the seriousness of the economic situation in the country, given the significance of the legislation that they're trying to work through right now, they quite literally need to be present, as I think probably problematic as that seems, given the CDC guidelines as to how this is supposed to work. And so there are a lot of questions right now, not just amongst Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats. When they discovered the news of Senator Paul's positive test earlier today, they actually ended the lunch that they were all sitting in and decided to reconvene via conference call. So this has really had a significant impact on Capitol Hill. To be frank, it's something I think everybody else in the country has been dealing with over the course of the last several weeks. And while lawmakers here, and obviously you mentioned 2 members of the House have tested positive for COVID-19, the House has been out of session. So they've been at home. So far, it hadn't really touched the Senate yet, at least on the member level, and now it has. And so they are facing up to this right now and trying to figure out what their next steps are.
Yeah, so you touched on really the most concerning kind of question still unanswered, which is if Senator Rand Paul tweeted out that he tested positive, when did he take the test? At what point did he learn of the results? Does his tweet indicate the most immediate fashion in which he learned it? And about being seen at the swimming pool, do we have any kind of response coming from Senator Paul's office about whether indeed that Mr. Moran would see him at the swimming pool was indeed the case, that it would be Rand Paul who was at the swimming pool?
I don't think there's any question at this point. We have not heard from Senator Paul's office yet in terms of beyond the initial statement that they put out and also making clear that he had received the results of his test this morning. I don't think anybody's disputing that Senator Moran saw Senator Paul at the gym this morning. And the other issue as well is that Senator Paul has been at these lunches with his colleagues over the course of the last several days. There's just been the Senate's in session, even throughout the course of this weekend, as they try and figure out how to address the serious economic damage the country faces right now. And so it's almost impossible for the senators not to interact with one another. Even those who aren't the lead negotiators on the bill, they have been meeting for the most part as a conference every single day for lunch. And so people have come across one another, have sat at tables with one another, have spoken to one another, and I think that's the genesis of the concern you're hearing right now, is whether or not they were in the gym with the senator this morning. Everybody was around him over the course of the last several days. I would also note the very real question that a lot of us have had as we've kind of digested this is, why on earth was the Senate gym open? There's no other gym open in Washington, D.C. right now.
Not even just in Washington, but just across the country that are closed. Anything that encourages any close contact between people has, ceased of business. And why would that gym be open? And the issues there, you underscore, Phil, the issues of timing, all these concerns of his colleagues about their interaction with him. At what point did he know to get tested? You reported earlier he got tested because of his concerns out of traveling, but I think that provokes a lot more questions too.
Yeah, look, I think that's true, and I'm not. I am absolutely ascribing no motivation towards Senator Paul on this in any negative way.
Right.
I think everybody's trying to grapple with this day by day at this point in time, and I think that goes for these members too. And I think part of the thing that we're seeing right now is watching people digest something in real time and recognize, which I think, to be frank, a lot of Americans have when they find out friends or relatives or colleagues have tested positive for coronavirus over the course of the last several days or weeks, is, oh, holy cow, okay, what were my interactions? Try to track back through, almost do a personal tracing of things, and I think that's what we're watching in real time.
Hitting
now,
closer to home for so many.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And again, these members have been in close contact with the physician in the Capitol over the course of the last several days, the last several weeks. I would note that our interactions on Capitol Hill with senators are a lot different right now than they traditionally are. We are every operation has scaled down their presence from a media perspective. We are usually in very close quarters with senators when we ask them questions, when we put microphones to their faces. That has dissipated largely. We're all trying to stay 6 feet away from one another. We're trying to give everybody distance and be cautious with one another. But I think there's just the reality of the moment of this hitting home for a lot of senators. And look, there's no other way around it. The Senate as a body, median age is old. And I think when you look at the highest risk individuals related to this, the greatest concern I've heard to some degree from senators, but very in particular from a lot of their staffers over the course of the last couple of weeks, has been what happens if this comes to the United States Senate? How are we going to act? What are we going to do because of concern of the age of a lot of the senators who are in their 70s or in their 80s? And I think so all of this is kind of washing over everybody as we speak, in the context of trying to do emergency economic legislation that's basically needed to keep the economy moving as early as Monday or Tuesday of next week. And so it's just, there's just a lot going on. I know that seems like an understatement to some degree, but that's kind of the best way I can summarize what I'm hearing from members right now.
Yeah, and of course, Phil, we are all wishing Senator Rand Paul the best, and anyone and everyone who is tested positive for coronavirus. But at the same time, we're all learning a lot from each individual case as we learn of each individual case. Phil Mattingly, thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, in New York, a dire warning and plea from Governor Andrew Cuomo. He predicts that 40 to 80% of people in his state will inevitably get the coronavirus. And now Cuomo is urging the president to put politics aside and help after Trump tweeted that governors should stop blaming the federal government for their shortcomings.
Look, everybody has their own style in life, right? I am working cooperatively with the president. This is not a time for politics. This is not a time for venting personal feelings. My feelings are wholly irrelevant. I have one job. I have one mission. That's to help the people of the state of New York.
CNN's Evan McMorris-Santoro joining me now. So, Evan, the governor also had some strong words for New Yorkers who have not been practicing social distancing. He once again made reference to, seeing people play basketball. He knows what kind of close contact is associated with that activity.
Well, yeah, Fred, that's right. I mean, we just heard from Phil that the Senate is waking up to how serious this is and may have not been practicing all of the preaching of social distancing that we've been hearing from public health officials. Well, the problem is that maybe here in New York, too, the epicenter of the coronavirus crisis here in the United States, that might not be happening either. And Governor Cuomo had some strong words for people who are just not doing what they need to do to keep this virus in check.
We talk about social distancing. I was in these parks. You would not know that anything was going on. This is just a mistake. It's a mistake. It's insensitive. It's arrogant. It's self-destructive. It's disrespectful to other people. And it has to stop, and it has to stop now.
Now, listen, I live here in New York City, and social distancing is difficult in a place like this. We have small grocery stores. You want to go in, there are other people in there. People trying to get out into parks and out of their small apartments and see things. Elevators, all sorts of stuff, right? Yeah. It's hard to do. But the reason why the governor is being so serious about this is because of the numbers in New York. We've had thousands of tests done, which is good news, but that results in thousands of cases. I mean, as of today, more than 15,000 confirmed cases. The governor trying to ramp up hospital coverage and hospital availability because he's expecting thousands of more cases to come in. So anything that we can do to try and alleviate that is something that the governor and other public health officials want us to do. Fred?
Oh, Evan, one thing we didn't mention, getting in a cab. I mean, what has that been like for New Yorkers, either refraining from doing so or getting it? That's another very close quarters communal thing.
I'll say this. On the serious side, everybody is swabbing everything down before they get into vehicles. But on the less serious side, this is the first time that everything that you ride in New York smells good.
I gotcha. Hey, we got to find the silver lining and find some humor in just about everything. But at the same time, we're taking it all very seriously. Evan, appreciate it. McMorris-Santoro.
Thank you.